The air still feels heavy, suffocating me with the lingering specter of what transpired. What I witnessed unfold before my very eyes. I still struggle, even now, to truly believe it. It chills me to my very soul, a pervasive, icy dread that infiltrates every thought, every memory, every beat of my exhausted heart. Just thinking about it sends a jolt of pure terror through my veins, a cold wave that leaves me gasping for air. Can you truly, genuinely, without the comforting shield of skepticism, grasp a reality where a living, breathing human being simply, impossibly vanishes into thin air? Not a trace, not a struggle, not a single sound? Leaving behind nothing but the chilling, undeniable echo of their presence, eternally trapped within the sepia tones of a nearly century-old, impossibly cursed photograph? A relic of a bygone era, long forgotten by the world, now holding a secret so terrifying, so profoundly unnatural, it feels like a wound ripped open in the fabric of time itself. This isn't merely a sensational story designed to entertain. This is a chilling, unvarnished truth, a horrifying reality that will seep into the quiet corners of your mind and might just steal your sleep tonight. Because with every trembling word, every hesitant breath, I'm about to lay bare a terrifying, inexplicable reality that shattered my own. We were nothing more than a group of audacious, dream-chasing filmmakers, brimming with the raw, untamed ambition of youth. Our hearts pounded with the rhythmic pulse of cinematic creation, our minds alight with the endless possibilities of storytelling. We were perpetually drawn to the magnetic, melancholic allure of old, abandoned mansions, decaying giants steeped in forgotten histories, each broken window a vacant eye gazing into the past. For our next ambitious shoot, our magnum opus, we chose a place whispered about in hushed tones, a secluded, utterly mysterious Zamindar Bari, a grand, imposing, yet utterly decaying estate nestled deep within the forgotten heartlands of Bangladesh. Imagine this, if your mind can even begin to comprehend the sheer, chilling absurdity of it. Every single night, without fail, my team members, normally hardened by the grind of film production, would recount seeing spectral, ethereal figures. They described them in chilling detail, draped in opulent, regal attire, their movements slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if they were perpetually preparing for a grand, long-dead feast, a macabre ballet frozen in time. The air would thicken with an unseen presence, the silence punctuated by faint, unidentifiable sounds. And then, on the very last day of our shoot, the day we had meticulously planned to wrap, the day we thought we'd finally escape this oppressive grandeur, Anirban, our brilliant, intense lead actor, simply, horrifyingly, vanished into thin air. We scoured every crumbling inch of that mansion, our frantic shouts echoing through its desolate halls, our minds reeling in disbelief. We found him later, not screaming for help in some forgotten corner, not injured in the dusty rubble, but inside a dusty, faded photograph hanging on a wall, an old, sepia-toned picture dated precisely to the year 1931. Incredible, right? The sheer impossibility of it defies all reason, all scientific explanation. But this, I swear to you, is the terrifying truth, a story not born of fiction, but based on a real, deeply unsettling haunting from Bangladesh, a chilling reality that refuses to be ignored. Who, in their right mind, would ever believe that the insidious darkness of a cursed night nearly a century ago could still reach out, seep into the present, and haunt us with such agonizing precision today? It feels like a malevolent thread woven through time, endlessly pulling at the fabric of our present. Yes, I'm Rahul, the cameraman, the one who tried to capture truth through his lens. And even now, as I force myself to recount this harrowing tale, the memories are so vivid, so visceral, that my hands and feet turn to ice, a frigid paralysis creeping up my limbs, and the hair on my arms prickles and stands on end, reacting to an unseen chill that only my memory can conjure. I'm talking about the infamous Balaiati Zamindar Bari, situated in the eerie quietude of Manikganj, a name whispered in hushed tones by locals, a place where, on the deepest, darkest, most desolate new moon nights, when the veil between worlds is said to be thinnest, the piteous, heart-wrenching wails of hungry, thirsty souls are still said to pierce the impenetrable, suffocating silence of the night. A silence so profound, it feels as though the world itself holds its breath, listening to the eternal lament of the damned. And this, my friends, is that ruin, not just a building, but a desolate monument, a skeletal remains of vanished glory, profoundly scarred by the merciless, relentless hand of time. It stands as a silent, crumbling witness to the once powerful zamindars, the feudal lords who once walked these grand halls with an air of unassailable authority, their laughter and decrees echoing through these very chambers. Today, it stands as nothing but a skeletal structure of crumbling, dust-laden walls, swallowed by encroaching, overgrown jungles that coil around its decaying stones like grasping green tendrils. It is a breeding ground not just for verdant growth, but for eerie folklore, for spine-chilling whispers of the supernatural, for tales that creep into the local consciousness and refuse to die. But just a year ago, oblivious to the true depth of its horror, a group of aspiring young filmmakers full of boundless energy and vibrant optimism arrived here. They were brimming with new hope, fueled by naive dreams of cinematic glory. Their eyes held the unwavering fire of creation, a passionate glint reflecting their artistic zeal. And their cameras, clutched tightly in their eager hands, held the ambitious dream of somehow bringing history to life, of capturing the essence of a bygone era, unaware that history, in this place, was far from dead. It was merely dormant, waiting to awaken and claim its due. Our collective dream was deceptively simple, almost innocently ambitious, to create a terrifying horror film, a cinematic masterpiece set against an authentic, crumbling historical backdrop. It was meant to be a blend of fear and forgotten grandeur. Anirban, a truly talented young actor whose commitment bordered on the obsessive, possessed an unyielding, almost reckless courage to reach for the sky, to push boundaries, coupled with a unique, almost beautiful madness for his craft. He was our magnetic lead, destined to captivate audiences. With him was Scariest, our formidable director, a woman of sharp intellect and unwavering resolve, a staunch rationalist who always, unfailingly, followed the uncompromising path of logic and scientific reasoning. She was our anchor, our intellectual fortress against the irrational. And then there was me, Rahul, the quiet observer, the dedicated cameraman, with a perpetual sparkle in my eyes, a relentless curiosity that drove me to discover something new, something profound, and an unwavering, almost desperate desire to capture raw, unfiltered reality through the cold, impartial lens of my camera. Leaving the relentless grinding hustle and suffocating noise of the city behind, we set up our makeshift camp in the deceptively quiet, profoundly abandoned Zamindar Bari. Our cameras, our tripods, our expensive gadgets, they weren't just tools, they were extensions of ourselves, our constant companions, our only shields against the unknown, or so we naively thought. For the first few days, a deceptive calm settled over us. Everything seemed normal, terribly, disarmingly normal. In the harsh light of day, this ancient mansion felt less like a tomb and more like a slumbering history. Every dust particle suspended in the sunbeams, whispering forgotten tales. Every creaking floorboard sighing with the weight of centuries. We laughed, we worked, our voices echoing through the vast empty rooms, sometimes speculating with a casual, almost flippant curiosity about the myriad stories, both grand and grotesque, held within these ancient decaying walls. We even playfully imagined ghosts, never truly believing. But as dusk descended, as the last rays of the sun bled from the sky, painting the crumbling facade in hues of bruised purple and melancholic orange, the atmosphere would subtly, almost imperceptibly shift. A profound, suffocating silence would descend, deeper than any natural stillness, pressing in on us from all sides, accompanied by an unsettling, almost palpable feeling. It was as if countless unseen eyes were constantly, relentlessly watching us from the shadows, their gaze a tangible weight upon our skin. Even beyond the cold, objective lens of my camera, I began to feel something unseeable, something that transcended the visual, something that could only be felt in the deepest, most primal parts of my being, a chilling, intelligent presence. One deep, oppressive night, after the day's physical and mental exhaustion had finally claimed everyone, lulling them into a fragile, short-lived sleep in their individual, creaking rooms, I lay awake, restless. Suddenly, a faint, almost ethereal movement flickered outside my window, a subtle distortion in the oppressive darkness. My eyes, still accustomed to the gloom, strained to focus, and then I saw them. Several indistinct figures, amorphous and shimmering, yet clearly in faded, old-fashioned, archaic attire, slowly, deliberately walking toward the central courtyard, their movements fluid, almost dreamlike. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the suffocating silence. And then, in the terrifying blink of an eye, as if they were made of smoke or shadow, they simply dissolved, utterly, impossibly, into the oppressive, all-consuming darkness that hugged the mansion. My camera, my trusted companion, my tool for capturing reality, was in my hand, nestled within my trembling fingers. But the thought of even attempting to take a shot, to record this profound impossibility, never even crossed my mind. My hands and feet felt frozen, stiff, utterly paralyzed by a terror so pure, so overwhelming, it rooted me to the spot. The next morning, when I hesitantly recounted the incident, Shriyasi and Anirban initially laughed off my experience, their voices laced with a dismissive amusement, attributing it to fatigue or overactive imagination. But I could clearly see the raw, unadulterated terror reflected back at me from my own horrified gaze when I dared to look in the mirror. A fear that mirrored the phantom images still burned into my retinas. They might have dismissed it, but I knew what I had seen. After that unsettling incident, the strange occurrences, once isolated, began to happen almost every single night with an unnerving regularity that shredded our nerves. Each successive night seemed to bring a new, more profound nightmare to life. The profound, almost tangible stillness of the night, usually broken only by the chirping of crickets or the distant hoot of an owl, would suddenly be shattered by the faint yet distinctly audible clinking of old, heavy utensils, the metallic whisper of cutlery against porcelain, the soft scrape of a serving spoon. These sounds would be followed by hushed, barely decipherable whispers like secrets exchanged across generations, and the mysterious, unsettling murmur of distant, muffled laughter, a sound both joyous and profoundly disturbing. It felt terrifyingly, undeniably, as if someone or something was meticulously reenacting a grand, long-dead feast from centuries past, a spectral dinner party eternally unfolding within these haunted walls. Can you hear those sounds even now, just from my description? Those chilling whispers, that phantom laughter. They still echo in the innermost chambers of my ears, reverberating through my memory, a constant reminder of the encroaching horror. Anirban, initially the most vociferous in dismissing all talk of ghosts, of curses, of anything beyond the tangible, began to visibly change. Gradually, inexorably, doubt and then a pervasive, gnawing fear found firm root in his once unyielding mind. He, who once strode through the mansion with an actor's confident swagger, now found himself walking alone in the dark, cavernous corridors at night, his heart pounding like a frantic drum against the cage of his ribs. He, who once strode through the mansion, now found himself walking alone in the dark, cavernous corridors at night, his heart pounding like a frantic drum against the cage of his ribs. He swore he felt an unseen presence, as if someone, cold and silent, was perpetually trailing him, their ethereal footsteps echoing his own. And then, the most horrifying part. Occasionally, he would feel the unmistakable, chilling, icy touch of a disembodied hand, a fleeting, glacial brush against his skin, leaving behind a cold imprint that lingered long after the contact was gone. Imagine that glacial, bone-chilling touch. The sheer concept of it, the profound violation of personal space by an unseen entity, sent shivers of pure terror down my own spine. My blood ran cold just hearing him describe it, the words catching in his throat. The raw, primal fear I saw etched in his eyes, the terror that contorted his usually expressive face, was utterly unlike the Anirban I knew, the fearless artist who embraced challenge. This was a man broken by an unseen force. Shreyasi, clinging desperately to her role as the staunch rationalist, tried to explain everything away with scientific precision. Perhaps, she reasoned, it was merely the creaking of old settling timber as the mansion expanded and contracted with the night's chill. Or maybe bats, disturbed by our presence, were flitting around in the cavernous spaces, creating deceptive sounds. Or, she would suggest, more desperately now, it was simply their minds, fatigued and strained by the eerie atmosphere, playing tricks on them. But even her logical explanations began to sound hollow, unconvincing, even to her own ears. The strangest, most undeniable thing, however, was the consistent, alarming drain on our equipment. When we worked at night, under the oppressive shadows of the mansion, our camera batteries, freshly charged and top of the line, would drain abnormally fast, plummeting from full to empty in mere minutes, as if something unseen, some insatiable entity, was siphoning their very essence, feeding on the electrical current. And our expensive electronic gadgets, our meticulously maintained filming equipment, would inexplicably malfunction, their screens flickering, their mechanisms seizing. My precious camera, my beloved tool, the one that had been with me on countless shoots, it felt as if its very life force, its intrinsic energy, was being systematically drained away each and every night, leaving it a lifeless shell. It was a tangible, undeniable assault on our modern reality. After that horrific, mind-bending incident, filming was paused for a few days. The air among the crew was thick with an unbearable tension. Everyone was restless with a palpable fear and raw panic. Many openly declared their desire to flee the city, to escape the suffocating grip of that mansion. But Anirban, something shifted fundamentally within him. He no longer seemed merely afraid. Instead, he felt an inexplicable, profoundly powerful, almost magnetic attraction towards that very mystery, that spectral phenomenon. The terrifying spectral feast of the night wouldn't leave his mind. It consumed him, a silent, unholy obsession. He seemed to want to see that horrifying scene again and again, drawn like a moth to a deadly, supernatural flame. Shreyasi, initially resistant, unwilling to confront such irrationality, eventually, reluctantly, succumbed to Anirban's relentless insistence. I could see a strange, unsettling fascination dawning in her eyes too, a flicker of that same dangerous curiosity that had gripped Anirban. We finally, against all logical reason, decided we would finish the remaining days of shooting. Perhaps, we reasoned, with a desperate, self-deceiving optimism, our cameras would finally capture that mysterious, elusive night scene, solidifying it on film, elevating our film to unprecedented new heights, creating a new, terrifying history in cinema. But I, Rahul, the observer, the one whose lens captured more than he wished, knew with a chilling certainty in my heart that we were perhaps, irrevocably, inviting a terrible, unspeakable fate, sealing our own doom within those crumbling walls. One deep, moonless night, the spectral sounds of that ghastly feast became even clearer, sharper, more immediate, as if someone was whispering grotesque secrets right next to our ears, their phantom breath chilling our skin. Our hearts pounded in our chests, a frantic rhythm against the rising tide of fear. Yet, compelled by a terrifying, inexplicable curiosity, an almost magnetic draw to the unknown, we cautiously, hesitantly moved towards the source of those mysterious, dreadful sounds. Every step on the creaking floorboards was agony. Every shadow seemed to writhe. Through the broken, decaying cracks of a splintered, forgotten door, what we finally saw instantly froze our blood in our veins, a chilling tableau that transcended all logic. In the dim, flickering, mysterious light, which seemed to emanate from no discernible source, several shadowy figures, their forms vaguely humanoid yet impossibly indistinct, were seated around a long, decrepit, worm-eaten table. They were unmistakably dressed in elaborate, ancient royal garments, their outlines hinting at intricate embroidery and forgotten finery. Though the precise, intricate details of their clothing remained tantalizingly unclear, swallowed by the oppressive gloom, they seemed burdened by the immense, crushing weight of centuries of history, each fold and drape hinting at vanished pomp. They were moving, gesturing, appearing to be eating, their spectral hands lifting unseen morsels, talking amongst themselves in that low, guttural murmur we had heard before. But the most terrifying, most soul-shattering part, the detail that plunged us into true horror, was that their faces were utterly, profoundly indistinct. Just vague, swirling darkness where features should have been, as if they had no faces at all, only terrifying, abyssal pits of profound darkness, voids staring out from beneath ancient robes. The hushed, spectral laughter and the unnerving clinking of those phantom utensils from that unspeakable feast hammered at our ears, a grotesque symphony of the dead. That night's spectral feast, there was absolutely no mistake. What we saw was no mere illusion, no figment of our sleep-deprived imaginations. It was a terrifying, undeniable reality. But as daylight broke, as the sun's first brave rays pierced the mansion's dusty windows, everything became quiet again, sickeningly normal. The air lightened, the shadows retreated, the oppressive silence lifted. It was as if what happened in the profound darkness of the night was nothing but a delusion, a fleeting mirage, a waking nightmare that evaporated with the dawn. Yet, the insidious seed of fear, once planted deep within us, had now taken root, its tendrils wrapping around our very souls, a terror not easily erased. But from then on, the incidents became even more terrifying, more explicitly unnatural, infused with a malevolent intelligence. Lights would suddenly, without warning, go out at night, plunging us into absolute darkness right before our very eyes, as if an unseen hand was deliberately, spitefully flipping a switch, reveling in our sudden fear. Even when we meticulously locked the heavy, creaking doors ourselves, securing them with chains and padlocks, we'd find them inexplicably wide open in the morning, their rusty hinges groaning in protest, exposing us to the unseen horrors lurking within. Expensive filming equipment, our livelihood, our precious tools would be found scattered haphazardly across the floor, as if tossed by an invisible tantrum. My own camera lens, my beloved vital lens, would be found detached and lying on the cold, dusty floor, as if someone had spitefully, deliberately, almost playfully torn it off, rendered it useless. It felt with an undeniable, chilling certainty, as if an invisible, malevolent force was actively wreaking havoc, demonstrating its power, its profound displeasure, as if they simply couldn't tolerate our intrusive presence within their ancient haunted domain. One deep, profound night, Anirban, lost in his growing obsession, was pacing alone on the mansion's vast, desolate roof. The surroundings were utterly silent, save for the distant, mournful hoot of a solitary owl, a sound that only amplified the profound isolation. Suddenly, he clearly, unmistakably heard footsteps, slow, measured, heavy, rhythmic, approaching him from the far end of the roof. Curiosity, now mingled with a creeping dread, compelled him to turn back, and what he saw instantly drained all color from his face, leaving him a pallid, trembling mask of terror. A tall, impossibly pitch-black, shadowy figure, its form like a tear in the fabric of reality, clutching a single, flickering candle that cast grotesque, dancing shadows, was slowly, deliberately approaching him, its movements silent, unnerving. The air around it grew impossibly cold, a palpable chill that cut through the night. Just as the terrifying figure was almost upon him, its form towering, oppressive, it inexplicably, abruptly vanished into the absolute, consuming darkness, as if it had simply dissolved into the very air itself. But right before the disembodied, terrifying figure disappeared, right in that infinitesimal fraction of a second, Anirban had looked directly into its eyes, and what he saw there would haunt him forever. Two burning, infernal red eyes, fiery and horrifying, like twin embers from a forgotten hell. Those eyes seemed to hold all the torment, all the agony, all the ancient, unutterable suffering of hell itself, a silent, screaming testimony to eternal damnation. Anirban tried to scream, a primal, guttural sound of pure terror, but no sound, no coherent cry escaped his constricted throat, only a choked, indistinct, horrifying rasp. Hearing that sound, that profound expression of primal fear, the rest of us, jolted from our fragile sleep, rushed frantically up to the roof, our flashlights cutting desperate swaths through the gloom. But the roof was utterly empty. Only dense, oppressive darkness and a chilling, unnatural breeze remained, whispering secrets of the unseen. Shreyasi, ever the rationalist, ever desperate to cling to logic, tried to calm him, her voice strained, saying it was probably his exhausted imagination, a nightmare bleeding into reality. But Anirban, his eyes wide and vacant, knew with an absolute terrifying certainty that what he had seen was no mere dream, no hallucination. He had clearly, undeniably seen those burning red eyes, eyes that had looked directly into his soul, stripping him bare. It felt, to me, watching him stand there, right in front of me, breathing, yet utterly changed, as if Anirban had already, irrevocably, crossed into another, more terrifying world, leaving a part of himself behind. A deep, insidious fear, colder and more profound than any he had ever known, began to settle within Anirban, rooting itself deep in his psyche. Desperate, clinging to the last vestiges of his sanity, he called his mother, pouring out everything that had happened, every single horrifying detail, between ragged, desperate sobs. She, naturally, urged him, pleaded with him to return immediately, to flee that cursed place, to come home. But Anirban, tragically, couldn't seem to break free from the suffocating, insidious web of that mystery, a spectral thread that bound him tighter with each passing day. An unknown, malevolent attraction, a terrifying gravitational pull, seemed to drag him deeper and deeper into the dark heart of that haunted mansion, into the very source of his torment. I could see a strange, vacant, lifeless look in his eyes, a disturbing emptiness that spoke of a battle lost, as if someone or something was slowly, agonizingly pulling his very soul away, piece by agonizing piece, leaving behind a hollow shell. Then came the last day of shooting. From morning, the entire surroundings of the mansion were unusually, eerily quiet. It was an unnatural stillness, a profound silence that set us all on edge. There was no trace of that terrifying phantom feast from the night before, no lingering echoes, no chilling whispers. Everyone, save for Anirban, felt a flicker of relief, a fragile, desperate hope that perhaps the entities had finally, mercifully left us. But Anirban's heart was pounding, a frantic drum against his ribs, an unknown, unbearable apprehension making him restless inside, his eyes constantly darting into the shadows. He felt with a crushing certainty that something truly terrible, something utterly irreversible, was going to happen tonight. My own heart, a cold, heavy stone in my chest, told me that this deceptive calm was merely the prelude to a terrifying, destructive storm, the held breath before a scream. The last night, the mournful, unseen bell of farewell was ringing its chilling chime, a solemn, premonitory knell for what was to come. But destiny, a cruel and capricious mistress, perhaps had something else entirely written for them, something far more sinister than we could ever have imagined. After dinner, as everyone was heading to their rooms, exhausted, emotionally drained, and eager for the dubious comfort of sleep, I suddenly noticed, with a jolt of icy dread, that Anirban wasn't in his room. His bed was untouched, his belongings undisturbed. At first, we tried to rationalize it, to cling to normalcy. We thought he might simply be taking a quiet walk outside in the calm night air, seeking solace. But when there was no sign of him even after a long, agonizing time, when our casual calls turned to frantic shouts, a chilling, profound dread, an abyss of terror spread like a deadly contagion through our quiet room, quickly consuming every last vestige of our composure. Shreyasi, myself, and the other remaining crew members were instantly stunned, paralyzed by the sudden, inexplicable void. Our hearts pounded in our chests like crashing, relentless waves against a shore, each beat a drum of impending doom. We searched the entire mansion frantically, like madmen possessed by a desperate, futile hope. Every dark corner, every crumbling wall, every whispering corridor, we scoured them thoroughly, our flashlights cutting desperate, trembling arcs through the dust-laden gloom, our voices hoarse from screaming his name. But there was no trace of Anirban anywhere. His mobile phone lay lifeless on his bed, a cold, unresponsive piece of plastic, as if he had been pulled away abruptly and without warning before he could even reach for it, before he could make a single call for help. It felt as if he had suddenly, inexplicably dissolved into thin air, evaporated into nothingness, or had been lifted away by an invisible, malevolent hand, spirited away into a realm beyond our comprehension. Shreyasi, the unflappable rationalist, became utterly frantic. Her carefully constructed logic, her lifelong beliefs in science and reason, seemed to shatter into a million irreparable pieces in an instant, crumbling around her like the very walls of the mansion. She wouldn't believe something so utterly impossible, something so profoundly unnatural, could truly happen. Her mind reeled against the undeniable evidence of his absence. I, trembling uncontrollably, my voice a mere choked whisper, kept talking about those shadowy figures of the night, about the phantom feast, about the burning red eyes, my words tumbling out in a torrent of fear and utter disbelief, trying desperately to make sense of the senseless. The fear and uncertainty deepened within us, a vast, consuming abyss of darkness threatening to swallow us whole, to erase us just as it had erased Anirban. As we continued our desperate, aimless search, our hopes dwindling with every passing minute, we eventually stumbled upon an old, abandoned part of the mansion, a section that had somehow remained untouched, unexplored during our weeks there. It was a pitch-black room, shrouded in a suffocating cloak of darkness, thick with decades of undisturbed dust and suffocating cobwebs that clung to our faces like ghostly shrouds. The air itself was heavy, permeated by the cloying smell of decaying wood and damp, stagnant air, a scent of forgotten time. This part of the mansion seemed to have been asleep for ages, preserved in a state of suspended decay, touched only by the icy grip of death and an eternal, oppressive silence. On the damp, crumbling walls, almost indistinguishable from the peeling plaster, hung countless old photographs, their surfaces faded and worn by the unforgiving hand of time, their colors leached away to sepia and gray. The pictures seemed like silent, knowing witnesses to some unknown, tragic story of the past, their vacant eyes staring out from the depths of history. For a fleeting, agonizing moment, our overwhelming fear and frantic restlessness paused, replaced by an unsettling curiosity. The answer to these horrifying, soul-shattering questions remains unknown, lost in the echoing silence of the Zamindar Bari even today. The profound, impenetrable mystery of the Balaiati Zamindar Bari's last night remains trapped, forever sealed, in the dusty pages of slumbering history, a story untold, where the very air hangs heavy with unseen sighs of despair, where every shadow seems to writhe and whisper with the chilling echoes of restless, eternally tormented spirits. So, after hearing this, do you still, truly, deep down, believe this is just a manufactured story, a mere tale spun for entertainment? Is there any logical, scientific, rational explanation for this horrific, impossible truth that unfolded before my very eyes, that shattered my reality? Have you, in your own life, ever had a haunting, inexplicable experience that sent bone-deep shivers down your spine, that defied all your preconceived notions of reality? Tell us, if you dare, in the comments below. Share your own chilling encounters. Or perhaps, if you're brave enough to confront more unknown horrors, suggest the next mysterious, cursed location we, or some other unsuspecting souls, should investigate. Remember, as I've learned, some doors are meant to remain closed forever, their secrets locked away, and some mysteries, particularly those born of ancient curses and undying love, simply have no end. They just deepen, drawing you further into their shadowy embrace. Has the profound, unsettling mystery of the Balaiati Zamindar Bari's last night truly stolen your sleep tonight, just as it has stolen mine forever? If you want to hear more spine-chilling night stories, if you possess the courage to confront more unknown, uncomfortable truths, then don't forget to check out the other terrifying videos in our playlist, where we peel back the veil of the mundane. Remember, as a wise, terrified man once said, some mysteries don't end. They just go deeper, ensnaring you, consuming you. Are you truly ready to dive into that profound, consuming darkness? Click here to watch the rest of the videos in our Real Paranormal Encounters playlist now, and let the nightmares begin. Suddenly, Shreyasi's eyes, wide with a desperate, disbelieving intensity, fixated on one particular photograph. That picture seemed different from all the others, drawing her gaze with an undeniable magnetic pull. It was a formal family portrait, dated unmistakably to the year 1931. Standing proudly, yet with a haunting solemnity, among the distinguished members of the ancient Zamindar family was a young man. And that young man, inexplicably, impossibly, looked exactly like Anirban. The world, already teetering on the brink of madness, seemed to spin violently before my eyes, the reality I knew dissolving into a terrifying hallucination. His eyes, his precise smile, the unique contours of his face, they were identical to Anirban's. It was as if I were looking directly into a mirror reflecting a past that defied all logic. And right next to him, her face etched with a profound melancholic sorrow, stood a woman, the very one we had glimpsed indistinctly in the dim, otherworldly light of the night's spectral feast. One of those shadowy figures come to terrifying, impossible life. Shreyasi's hand, already trembling from fear, now shook violently as she reached out and gently, reverently held the fragile photo. Both our eyes were fixed, transfixed, on that single, impossible image, as if caught in a temporal eddy. We seemed utterly lost in the fathomless depths of time, trapped between two impossible realities. And then, what we finally learned from hushed local legends, from fragmentary, whispered accounts, sent a chilling current, a surge of icy dread down our spines, confirming our worst fears. This young man in the photograph, the doppelganger of our lost friend, was indeed the only beloved son of that very Zamindar family. He had planned, with a desperate, youthful passion, to elope with the woman he deeply loved, defying the rigid conventions of his time. But their dream, their passionate hope, was never, ever fulfilled. On a new moon night, almost identical to the very night Anirban vanished, both of them mysteriously, inexplicably disappeared from the deep, suffocating darkness of this very mansion, swallowed by its hungry shadows. Folktales, passed down through generations, mournfully whisper that their unfulfilled souls, bound by a love denied, still wander these haunted halls, forever condemned to return, compelled to reenact their unfinished, tragic final feast, eternally yearning for a release that never comes. Think about the profound, heart-wrenching irony, the horrifying tragedy of it all. How their undying love, meant to be a bond of joy, became an eternal, inescapable curse. Anirban, was he inexplicably, impossibly linked to that cursed night? To that tragic, long-dead love story? Why was his face, the face of our friend, in that ancient, faded photograph taken nearly a century ago? Why did he look exactly, unnervingly, like that Zamindar's lost son, his exact replica? Did the unfulfilled, restless soul of the Zamindar son, yearning for completion, for a final, desperate reunion, drag Anirban, his spitting image, his spiritual successor, into the terrifying depths of this mansion to finally write the last horrifying chapter of their unfinished, accursed tale? Or, even more chillingly, was Anirban himself the reincarnation of that lost, damned soul, destined to relive a tragic fate, to be reclaimed by a past that refused to stay buried?